Hello, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Burnt Pancakes podcast. I am your host, Katie Fensky, and today I'm bringing you a conversation with a special guest. Her name is Madison Kopta, and she is the mother of 4 children, but her motherhood journey has a unique twist to it. She is raising 2 biological daughters who are 5 and 6 and has welcomed 2 more kids through adoption who are 13 and 15. This diverse experience led her to author 2 books. So she is a published author. And she explains how motherhood has taught her a lot about resilience, patience, and the power of love. I am so excited to bring you the story of her experience of going through the foster care system with these 2 kids, what it's like blending your family with adopted kids, and how she overnight became the mother of a teenager. So I would love for you to enjoy this conversation. So stay tuned. Madison, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I am really looking forward to this chat. I know we talked a little bit ahead of time, but I'm excited to hear your story. So why don't you start off, introduce yourself, let us know the ages of your kids.
Yeah. So my name is Madison Kopta. I have 4 kids. I have 2 biological daughters who are 5 and 6, and then I have 2 kids I adopted out of foster care, and one just turned 13, and the other is about to turn 15 in February.
So like teenagers, you're in the
Yes.
teen world.
We're in
And
the
they
teen
are
world.
girl, boy, right? Girl, boy.
Yes, our adopted kids are girl, boy.
Okay.
Mhm.
So let's hear the story. Like, how did you go, one, from having 2 kids, because you had your girls already before you did foster care. So like, how did you
Yes.
get into that and like the story of how you ended up adopting them?
Yeah, so I'd always wanted to foster since I was in high school. I had a friend who fostered, and we were, of course, in high school. So those girls that they'd fostered were just like so cool and older, and
Oh,
I just wanted to be like them. So I kind of just got it in my head that I would foster too. Um, and we had our 2 little girls, and we didn't feel like, the family was done or whatever. And then, I didn't really know if I wanted to get pregnant again or what that would look like, but I did want to foster. So, um, how I told my husband at the time, I was like, hey, you know what? We're not sure what our family's going to look like, but we could have kids right now who are going through something really hard. So I think we should apply to foster. And that just got him. And
so like instantly he was like, sure, let's do it.
yeah,
Or did it
no,
take some, wow,
no, that was
because
it.
that's a big, big commitment. And it's a
Yeah,
big thing for your whole family to think about. How old were your girls when you decided to foster?
they were little. I think they were probably maybe 2 and 3. They were
Okay.
really little. Yeah.
Okay. All
Mhm.
right.
And
So he's on board. So
he's
like
on
what
board.
steps did you have to go through?
So I, the next day, just went ahead and contacted this foster agency we'd heard about. And they were great. And that was wonderful. I'm so glad I contacted them, and they were private. So when you foster, you can go through like the county or of wherever you are, or you can get a private
Oh,
organization.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I kind
Okay.
of describe it like when you're buying a house, you can just go through the realtor who's selling the house for the sellers, or you can get
Mhm.
your own realtor. So that's kind of how I explain it. So we went through
Okay.
the organization. So like we had our own realtor, and
Got
then they
it.
would communicate with the county for us. That's not totally what it is. And I'm sure there are FFA workers out there who are like, no, that's not it. But
That's how it felt to you.
that's how it felt.
So did
Yes.
you feel like you had a little bit more guidance in like what you had to provide and turn in because you had someone
Yeah.
kind of like holding your hand through the process?
Yes. And I mean, going through the county, they're going to help you too because they really need foster parents. But having an FFA worker, and I have no idea what the FFA stands for. That's just what they always called it.
Called themselves.
Yes. So having one of those, they are really on the side of the family, whereas the county is really going to be on the side of the kid, which someone
Oh,
should be. But they're
okay. Yeah.
going to look at, hey, like, is this the best fit for your family? Which I think was a really great call because we did have little kids, and
Hmm.
it wasn't like we were just a couple without kids, or one of us was single and
Right.
wanting
Or
to
your
foster.
kids were grown. That's a big deal that you have to think we are bringing in someone into our already established family. So you have to consider that as well. Yeah.
So, yeah, we got our application in and all the training. I think you need about 24 hours of training. And
Is that all like virtual or do you have to do in-person training?
we did in-person training, but we got licensed right before COVID. So there
Things are
was
probably
less.
different now.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I'm sure it's different now. So we did it in person, which was fine. It was just 2 8-hour days that we did.
Okay.
But we did it in person and we set up a spare bedroom. You have to, I guess you don't have to, but our agency really pushed that we like create a family book and like give it to the county. So when they pick up a kid who's coming to our house, they have something to look at. And so they know where they're going.
Got it.
Yeah,
So
so
at that point, were you, after you finished your training, you were approved? You were just kind of waiting? So
yes,
could it be that like tomorrow I get a phone call or like 6 months from now? Is it kind of a waiting game where you just don't know?
it kind of, well, it depends on you a lot. So we landed with our kids who were not in our list of what we were looking for. And thank goodness. But it depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for a child who is emancipated, so totally up for adoption in a
Mm,
certain age range, you could be waiting a while because
it's
that
more
just
unique.
right.
Yeah.
They aren't necessarily around to go to your house.
Right.
But if you say, we'll take anyone, then you'll get calls all the time. And
Ugh.
depending on how many you
Yeah,
can
I'll be
take.
ready. So
Yeah.
did you have like your little checklist of like initially, what did you say you wanted? What was your,
Initially, well,
I
it
mean,
kind of
everyone wants
became
like a
a
little
joke.
baby, right?
Right. And I kind of thought that's what I would want too, and having them in line with our kids.
Right.
But
And you have all the gear
yes.
still and
But looking back, I'm like, thank goodness we didn't do that. And thank goodness there's an age difference and you can kind of like divide and conquer almost. But
right.
initially we were 0 to 8 years old. And of course we were placed with a 9 and 11-year-old. But
But sometimes you're like, who was really looking out for us in this? Like someone
right.
had a hand in that, right?
Yes. And actually it became a running joke where like the social workers and even my husband at the time, they were like, no one can call me for a placement. Like one time we got a call about a 17-year-old boy who was violent. And I was like, yeah, bring him over. He needs a mom. Come over. Yep, I will take him. And so at that point, they were like, we're not calling you. Like,
Yeah, because it
I
is
just
true. You
couldn't
do
say
have to consider
no.
I have two little girls at home. Like
Right.
that makes a difference. What's the oldest age you could get? Is it 18 or
I think it's 18. I know they are like, I believe you can technically be in foster care up to like 21 or.
okay, I saw
Yeah.
something that it was like
Mhm.
0 to 21, but there's like over 400,000 kids in the United States in
Yeah.
foster care. That like number blew my mind. Like,
Yes.
wow, like what an incredible thing you're doing.
Yes. Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, the kids make it easy there. I'm so grateful we were placed with them and that we did say yes. And I don't ever want to say, just take a chance, but even with our oldest boy, we were told he has behaviors. So that would be like,
A
he could be
challenge.
violent or yeah, challenging. We were told he was really disrespectful and it could be our personalities and we all just meshed and it was great.
Yeah.
But he was nothing like that ever.
Yeah.
So
Or who knows, he was just like acting out because he just needed
um,
love. He needed someone to care for him. So after you were done, how long until you got the call that these two were looking to be placed?
So we had a placement before we were placed with these kids, and that one didn't work out, which even though it just wasn't right for our family and
Mhm.
our dynamics, at the time it was so new and I just felt like I was letting everyone down by saying, like this isn't
Right.
a good fit, even though
Right.
now looking back and knowing people who have said no to other kids, like that happens. And,
Mhm.
no one wants it to happen, but it's okay. I wish
Right.
someone had just
And
said,
like, yeah, I think that would be really hard
yeah.
to, because you are saying no to a child that needs
Mhm.
help, but being able to say like, I'm just not the right fit for this kid is okay as well.
Just how that trauma manifested. It just it
Mhm.
didn't work out. And it was so funny too. It's not funny, but it was funny too, because she checked off all the boxes that we said we wanted. Age, she
Oh.
was available to be adopted. She was emancipated. Basically on paper, she was everything we said we
Mhm.
wanted, but it wasn't quite right. And then this not quite right situation ended up being perfect. So
Yeah. It was meant
it's
to
such
be.
a hard, yes.
Yeah.
And it's so hard to give advice on because it's like, well, it feels right when you get the call, go for it.
Hmm. So
Probably
what
right.
happens if a child does not get placed with you? They go back, but where do they go back to? Just another house? Is there like an orphanage? What?
So there's no longer orphanages. Kids, if they're older, they can go into a group home, which would be like the
Oh,
closest thing to an
okay.
orphanage. But for the most part, they just go into other foster families.
Okay. There's
Or
enough people out there fostering that there's homes for them?
yeah, kind of.
I
I
don't
think.
see, I only know of, I think, one
Oh,
family in that I've run across that I've met personally that have fostered. So like to hear your story seems so
yeah.
unique. Like, wow, I don't hear this every day.
Yeah. So there are, and with our agency, they created such a community for the foster parents.
Okay.
We would do something called respite. So when you're a foster parent and you have the space and you're licensed and all that,
Hmm.
if someone's fostering a child that, you know, isn't up for adoption, it is like strictly a foster placement and they need a break or they need to go on vacation, the foster child has to go to an approved family. So
Okay.
sometimes, you know, we've had respite where we had a kid for a weekend or, you know,
Oh,
a few days,
okay.
that kind of thing. But they were living with like friends of ours who are also fostering.
Got
So
it. I love that
there's
there's a
those,
community for you because I bet as a mom, like a foster mom, there are times that you want to talk to someone who's in your same situation so that they have that support for you is nice.
yeah, our agency, which I know counties probably don't have, but our agency had a support group once a month that where you could go.
Wow.
Um, which was great. That was
Mhm.
awesome.
Mm. Okay, so you get your two kids for fostering, and were they available to adopt at the time, or were you just thinking, oh, we're just gonna keep them until they need to go somewhere else, or
Yeah, they were not up for adoption. The agency wanted a family that could adopt them should it go that way, which is
oh,
pretty common because you just never know. But the kids were placed with us with the intention that they would go back to their biological dad.
okay.
And that didn't work out.
At the
But
time, how old were they? They were
were placed with us at 9 and 11.
9 and 11. Okay.
The case trying to figure out, you know, are they going back with dad? Are they going, with other family? While the county was sorting that out, that took about a year. And then by that last court date, when it said, hey, look, they're going to be emancipated, so you can adopt them. The county has to then search for all the family. They have to do like due diligence, fully exhaust who they could go with. And that's when they found other family who were interested. And that experience was probably the most devastating, where you
Mm.
are kind of told, hey, like, this is it. This is family. You're going to adopt them. And then it just, everyone's just trying to do their job. Like, no one wants to break any hearts, but
Right, right.
then you're hit with this, oh, actually,
Ah.
you're not adopting
And you
them.
had them for a year at that point, right?
So we'd had them for a year.
And in that process, you were thinking, okay, we might keep them. This is working out.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
And I worked really hard too with their biological dad, just to create, like, he came for Christmases, all that, just in case if it didn't work out for them to go back, that he could feel like, hey, like, this doesn't end the relationship. I know parents and it's good.
Hmm. Yeah.
And it was so heartbreaking to feel like, I got family on board and behind us, and we worked on those relationships. And then it was found out that they were going somewhere else. And that, of course, didn't happen. I had no right to fight this hard. Really, as a foster parent, you're really low on the list. And I had no right to fight as hard as I did against the county to keep the kids here. But and it's not because I don't want them to go with family. I think that's really important, but I just felt like, the kids didn't know them. They'd been with us for a year. The other people didn't like know the family. We just had this little community for the kids. And
So this was family members that the kids didn't even know about.
They didn't know them, right? These parents adopted one of their half siblings. So they'd never met our kids.
Got it.
And they, no, again, I don't want to, they just heard there were kids in foster care that were related to their son. So in their mind, from their perspective, it was, yeah, of course we'd take them. But
yeah.
I really fought the county so hard to not move them because I just truly believed it wasn't in their best interest.
I was like, is there something in your mom gut that was just telling you this needs to be fought?
Yes. And thankfully by that point, because we'd had them for a year, our oldest was 12. So in the state of California, he's old enough to say where he wants to go.
Oh.
So he was able to speak to the county as well and say, like, he had the legal right to say, I'm not going.
Okay.
So he was able to actually make that decision for him and his sister. So they stayed and we adopted him.
Wow. And how like amazing that they can stay together. And yeah. Did you have like a big party on the official day? Like, is it a court? I've seen a few people do like a gotcha day.
Yes.
Where like you haven't heard anything. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh wait, you have a kid? And it's like a courtroom gotcha day. Did you do something like that?
We did that. Our court date didn't actually end up happening until about a year after we were told we could keep them.
Whoa. So what is that called then? So you're still like foster parents, but you have all, what is it, legal say?
Yes.
As a foster parent, you would have that, like you have all of their school. Cause like I had to fill out my son's like registration the other day and I was like, okay, like I am the person of contact. And so that's what you are as a foster parent.
Yes, you're the person of contact, but when you're a foster parent, you can't make decisions about school most of the times.
Is it the county that makes those decisions?
It'll either be the county or it'll be their biological parent. So their biological dad made all those calls for school until, that script flipped and he relinquished rights or lost.
Okay. And that was before the official adoption though. Okay.
Yes. But we had a good relationship with dad. So that when school issues did come up, he was really happy to
talk it over,
work through things with us. And that was great.
Okay. All right. So they had the official court date. That's when like the adoption happened. And how did you navigate? The kids were old enough to understand like maybe dad doesn't want me anymore and this family, how do you navigate talking to them about that? I mean, it was all new to you that no one taught you that, right?
It's rough and it's still rough because things come up and now we don't have contact with dad.
Oh, was that part of the adoption or choice of a parent? Okay.
Yeah, he just still struggles.
Okay.
With things. So we don't have contact anymore. Dad will kind of talk to Sam. So my husband, he'll talk to him and just check in on the kids. But no, he doesn't actively talk to the kids anymore. And that's hard to navigate because I know the kids do want to talk to their dad and they don't call us mom and dad. They call us Maddie and Sam.
Oh, okay.
Because when we were placed with them, they knew who their parents were and still talked to them. So we weren't mom and dad.
Like that would be very different if they had been very young when this thing happened.
Yeah. Which is fine. It used to bother me a lot. I really wanted them to call me mom, but at this point, like what is mom? Like that looks so different in this relationship. Like maybe for them, mom is someone who leaves and maybe it's okay that I'm not mom. Like it just maybe looks different. And it's such a unique look. And you really just have to, as a mom, at least for me, I really had to just kind of give up that what I felt like being a mom looked like for me probably doesn't look the same to them.
For
And that's
them.
okay. And that doesn't make it
Oh,
bad. It
that's
just is.
really interesting insight.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I was just talking to another mom who is a teen mom. She has teens, and one of her advice is like, don't take things personally. Like you
Mhm.
can't take their feelings and what they say personally because it's not coming
Yeah.
from you.
Yeah. The other
Interesting.
day, our girl, she was mad about something and she's like, I just wish you never adopted me. And I was like, yeah, I mean, that makes sense. I mean, and it's the same thing.
You
There
can't take
is
it
so much
personally.
pain and hurt.
But
And
inside,
yes, I mean, yeah,
oh,
you're
you
like,
just
oh,
crushed me. Or
no,
she probably knew, oh, this one's gonna
yeah,
hurt if I
this
say
is
it, but I don't
her.
really mean it. I mean, I said things to my mom I did
Oh, yeah,
not mean, right?
I know.
Oh, that
I mean, we're so close. I was like, okay, go to sleep, have a snack.
eat something, please.
Eat something that I bought that you didn't want, apparently.
Yes. Oh, how did your own girls, how did they were still pretty young when this happened, but how have they like meshed with these two?
So our youngest, I don't, she wouldn't even know a life any different than having Zeke and Michaela as her brother and sister. Um, our oldest, though, right in the middle, she cried all the time when we first got them. And I think she knew something was different.
Hmm.
The energy shifted and she had these horrible meltdowns constantly for about a month until things evened out. But,
Wow. That's
you
just
know,
how she processed
yeah.
something
And,
new happening.
we just had to let her kind of fall apart because you can't really explain it.
No.
She just all of a sudden didn't have her own room. She was in a room with her little sister, which she's totally fine. But all of a sudden, her world changes and there are
Yeah.
these two older kids that she doesn't know and
And probably
everything.
need a lot of your attention. Like they probably
Yeah.
needed a lot.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, what was it like going from having like basically toddlers to all of a sudden overnight you've got these preteens?
So that I can remember describing that to my mom as going from Pop Warner to the NFL because when we were placed with the older kids, it was right in the middle of COVID lockdown. So not only was I
Oh,
from like little kids, I was going to two middle schoolers who needed to be homeschooled.
oh my gosh. You're a
I was just
saint.
I was just there and I just was thrown into, and I mean, really, like if the kids weren't great, I wouldn't have been able to do it, but they were great and were cooperative and funny. And
They're like, how about some help with my algebra homework?
I was like, I can't help you. Like, I don't know.
Oh
But
my God, that is a crazy time for
it
this all to happen. Whoa.
was wild.
Hmm. And just like the personalities are different and wow. Do they stay in contact with any of their family? Okay.
Yes. So they have an aunt and uncle who they lived with for a little while. And they weren't able to hang on to them because they are a little bit older and they have their own health issues. So they weren't able to hang on to them, but they're actually spending the night at their house tonight.
Oh,
So yeah. So we do
yeah.
have close relationships with some of their family still.
Okay. Because that's
Yeah.
helpful. I know, like me personally, I like to know my heritage and, you know, they would want to know that or ask questions about, their grandparents and stuff. So that's nice that they still have that.
Yeah. And I don't know that every county does this, but we got a binder for each child that had from birth to when they were adopted, all of their family history that the county could find, all their health history, everything. So the kids know they have these binders, but we actually did not let our kids look at them because there's things in them,
Hmm.
like they just don't need to know about their dad's like drug history right now or
Right.
what happened with mom. And it's everything. So like
Okay.
arrest history.
Like it's not censored.
No, not at all. It's everything, which is great for them to have when they're like 25.
Yeah.
So
And
what we
can maybe deal with
yes.
that better. Yeah.
And not be a 15-year-old boy and feel like this is your definition. This is just how you got to where you are, but it's not who you are.
Hmm.
So they know about the binders and they know they're there, but I described it to the kids as, hey, like this is really heavy. So I'm going to carry this for you until we're a little bit older and you know exactly where it is in the closet. And who knows, maybe they've looked at it because they are home alone sometimes. So they could have, but I was like, it's here in the closet for you. This is what it is. And one day, years from now, when you know who you are, yeah, go for
Right.
it. But
Right.
until then, we just don't need to be burdened with
Right.
this.
Too much, like a lot of information.
Yeah.
Wow. What is it like having teens right now? I'm like, preteens are like knocking on the door for me. I've got a 9, almost 10-year-old.
Okay.
So I'm like, give me all the tips on
I
teenagers.
honestly think it's so fun. Like, I
See, I
love
love
it.
that. That is what I'm hoping. I'm hoping that I can just embrace, like, they're going to be awkward. They're going to, be emotional, but it's also such a fun time.
It's so fun. It's the best. Like, you always see these memes where you're like, oh, you have toddlers and you're just waiting for them to be teens because it's going to be easier. And then they're like, joke's on you. It's not. No, well, I could just be mean, but like, they're so fun. And they have like Zeke's in football, which I wrote one of my books about. And
Oh.
so fun.
I
And
am also a football mom. So when you said he was in
it's
football,
the
I'm like, oh,
best.
I get it. It's
Yes.
like my favorite part of my week is
100%.
Saturday mornings. Those are our football games. I love it. Yep.
Yeah, so he's doing football, which is amazing. And Michaela, she's very artistic, but she has like kind of a big social group and she does church stuff and all that. So she's got a lot going on. And I know we talked about this before, but being my age, I'm only 31 and Zeke is 15. So we're close in age. And that could be why I enjoy them so much because I still feel like I'm pretty close to their age. So talking to them about stuff, I'm like, oh my gosh, what happened at school? They did what? So there is that rapport, but I just think it's so fun. I think the only advice I could ever give is advice to myself and be like, remember, you're the parent. Don't get wrapped up in what their friends are doing.
Yes.
I have a
Yeah.
tendency to be like, tell me more about it. This is
What's
exciting.
happening? What have there been any like hard points of the adoption foster portion? Like I mean, I say I love being a mom, but there are days where you're like, oh, that was rough. Like, are there some things that aren't so rosy and sunny?
With Zeke's a boy and I grew up with sisters, so I never really personally, I never navigated the having a brother or boy things.
Okay,
So,
same. I had a
yeah,
sister and I
so
have 3 boys now, and I'm like, whoa, this is a different world.
yeah, like this is a whole different arena. So trying to not, I sometimes have a tendency to get hard on our older one about like bugging the little girls or teasing his sister, but I know that's part of just that's like a love language for teenage boys that you forget about that they just
Mhm. They can't
want.
help themselves.
Yes. Yes.
And it is, I tell myself a lot too. Like, I feel like I'm very hard on my oldest because it's like, you're the old one. I expect you to be the leader. And sometimes I'm like, he must get sick of being the oldest and the like quote unquote responsible one and the example. So sometimes I'm like, I feel like I need to back off of that a little bit.
And like dealing with tech has been a big one too. And not just for
Oh,
Zeke, but like for our oldest daughter too, where you have to now it's like this new element that's in parenting that our parents didn't have, but
mm-hmm.
to make sure everything that we're doing is appropriate online and
Right. This is something like I'm dying to have someone to come on the podcast and just like lay it all out. Like, what do we do with social media? What do we do about phones? I put a question on my Instagram stories, like, at what age did you give your kid a phone? Because my son keeps saying, oh, so and so has a phone. So why can't I get one? And I'm like, I just don't, other than saying, when I was a kid, I had to have my driver's license to get a phone. That's what I just keep saying that because I'm like, I don't know how to navigate this yet. Like, I know it's right around the corner,
Mhm.
but I don't know, it's new for us. And do I want him on social media? No. But do I think like that's like our future now,
Yes.
especially with sports? People say like, if you want to, show yourself in sports, you've got to have a page and you've got to, put your highlight reels or whatever on there. I'm like, oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
Yes. our oldest doing basketball and football, he had to have a phone from the coaches. They were like, the boys have to text and be a part of it.
Because they don't text parents anymore. They text the players.
No, they text the players, which is terrible because even getting the text, he's like, I don't know what's going on. But the schools now, our high school, they have a Snapchat for the kids to go on. So our son's not on it, but
like the actual school does, like a school. Oh my God.
Yes, like a school Snapchat for like each class. So there's a freshman Snapchat. And I'm like, I don't feel like we need that. But
right.
What do I know?
But it's hard. It's hard to raise your kids when that's everywhere. And I keep telling him, he's like, Mom, what does he call me? Like, he keeps saying I'm so old. And I'm like, well, like, I am older than you, but I'm also like trying to do things that'll keep you happy. And I'm just worried that, and there's like stuff with phones and social media, you cannot stay on top of anymore.
Yeah.
So.
Oh yeah. You just can do the best that you can do. But Zeke finds workarounds all the time.
Oh, my friends' kids, they were like, I thought we had everything covered. And then they start their own YouTube channel and you're like, what?
Or they post to YouTube and you're like, you're not allowed to do that. And well, everyone else is, or.
Yep. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
God, it's hard. Yeah. Ugh. All right. So let's hear how your story inspired you to become a published author. I want to hear about that.
Yeah. Okay. So that really all started. So writing a book or a novel, it was always something I guess I wanted to do, but one of those things where you just never think you could. And I don't know really.
I mean, I always think there might be a book in me, but I'm like, I have no idea what I would write. I don't know, like when I'd have the time to sit down. Yeah.
I was inspired by my daughter, who we adopted, but I was also inspired. So Watched in the Woods, that's the first book I wrote. So I've got Coach Hitch. That's the one that I really talk about Zeke and football and all that, which will come out this year. But Watched in the Woods is my debut baby. That's also coming out this year. And that was really inspired by our daughter. And that all started because she was going into junior high. And she and her brother were going to the junior high that I went to growing up, where I met my three best girlfriends, who are still my best girlfriends today. And they're making these friends at the school and doing all these things that I did that really for me were so formative at the time. So I wrote the story where my daughter was in a lot of ways me making these close girlfriends, and this character is in foster care and has moved to a new school, which she had to do, and that was hard for her. And I tried to give the character a lot of her mannerisms and things that she did and how she copes with, or how she's talked about coping with that trauma and moving forward. And so I don't use any of her actual story in the book, but it talks a lot about, so one of the ways she navigates the trauma or how she protects herself is she doesn't remember what happened, and it comes in flashbacks. So the character, she remembers her trauma in flashbacks throughout the book. So you're taken back to these really awful things that this child has seen and had to work through. And at first I thought, well, maybe that's too dark. But really, if you think about it, I mean, everything these two kids have gone through is way too dark for them.
And they're probably not the only kids out there that have gone through that.
And I think, and too, kids see dark things, all like they're tough, and being able to read about someone who was able to overcome it, even if it's maybe more extreme than their story. Maybe their story is their parents are going through a divorce and they're working through that, or something like that. That's scary and big. Having another child navigate through it and see how they did that, I think that's so huge and impactful and helpful. And so this character, Maya, goes to science camp with her new friends and makes friends there, but they go into the woods and they discover Bigfoot, which was a big thing for me. We're up in Northern California, so for friends, we actually loved Bigfoot. And he's very prevalent in our little town. Like if you go to the grocery store down the street, there's a big painting of Bigfoot. He's everywhere here. So they go and find Bigfoot. And then the parents get involved and they have to, sort it out because the parents ruin everything. But
That's a good point to put in the
yes.
book. Yes. The kids are going to like that.
Kids sort it out. So really, I wanted there to be things to learn, but I also just wanted it to be in a lot of ways like junk food for the kids, like a Goosebumps novel.
Mm-hmm.
It's small, it's a short book, but a lot goes through that. And I know for our daughter, being seen has been so profound for her. Like the back of the book is her, or I mean, the front of the book is her back.
Okay.
It's her. And I know she's just felt really special about that. And then when that got picked up and that was liked, I thought, you know what, I'm going to do the same thing, but for Zeke, and a young adult novel. And there's this character, he's less of the focus, which he liked, but
like, keep me out of it, Mom.
Yeah, he was like, okay. But Coach Hitch, follows, this football coach whose health is declining, and that navigates aging. And then we've got Zeke, which I actually just named it after Zeke. He's going into the football team and navigating foster care and trying to be a team player, but also working through what he's working through. And then I've got this character, Callie, who is a really good kicker and tries out for the team. And the coach doesn't like that because he's older and it's a girl, and how she moves through that and how they all become this really great team working together. And so I love overcoming adversity and the underdog kind of stories. And that's really what I've written about majority of the time. And it all takes place in Northern California because as it should.
I love that. Perfect setting. Perfect setting. So they are coming out this year, your books?
Yes.
Is there a place we can find them if we wanted to get those?
Yes. So as soon as pre-orders available, you can go to my website, which is just madisonkopta.com. And I try to post about it as much as I can on Instagram and Facebook. And that's just at Madison Kopta. And I try to keep people as up to date as possible, but that's where all the updates come from.
That's exciting. I'll put all of those in the show notes. But that's so exciting. Like anytime someone says they've written a book, I'm like, that's a big deal. So congratulations on that. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Okay. To wrap this up, what would be your piece of advice for any parents that are contemplating or considering foster care?
I think if you're at the point where you're contemplating fostering, you should just do it. I think there's always going to be a time where it's just not quite right. And it's always going to be easier not to, because it's something you don't have to do. You don't have to uproot your entire life. You don't have to. So it's always going to be easier not to. But looking back, I can tell you, I would do it again for these kids forever. I'm so glad we did it. And I'm so glad we did it at a really inconvenient time when it was COVID and
yeah.
And it was stressful. And I remember the first 2 weeks were so hard. I would go into the kitchen and almost like hyperventilate and cry because I didn't have to do it. I didn't have to turn my world upside down and have two kids who really didn't want to be there in the house with us, because they don't. I mean, it's just the truth of it. They may not want to be there.
Initially, was it like very awkward? And how did they act when you first got them?
They were always
angry. Were they
kind of a little bit, but they were always super polite. But in their minds, yes, they didn't want to be there. They wanted to go back home and be with their family. And so as polite as they were, it wasn't home yet. So it is awkward. It's just hard. You just have to get through it. It's really hard, and just everything's new for them. Now your home is not like this safe place. You just have to think about things more, but that goes away. And eventually you've got this new normal that's better than it was. So it's worth it.
Yeah.
Do it. And it's hard. It is hard.
Yeah.
at times. And then it's great.
But then you're right. You have a family that you'll have forever.
Yes.
Yeah. That's so awesome. Well, I want to thank you so much because your story is truly so inspiring. I mean, you must feel like day to day, it's like, oh, this is just my story. But coming from someone who's never been in your shoes, I'm like, it's pretty remarkable.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate it. It's been incredible. And I'm so honored that people want to hear about it. And I love talking about it and just talking about how attainable fostering and writing a book is, because I did it. And
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm like, I'm just this dorky mom. So anyone can do it.
Right. That is totally it. And I cannot wait to hear all about how the launch goes and see it when it's officially published. Do you have your own copy yet?
No, not yet.
Okay. That will be a big deal.
Just online with my publishers that we've sent back and forth, but no,
Oh,
nothing.
that's so exciting.
Yeah.
Well, you'll have to post on social media when you actually get it in your hands.
I will. Oh, I'm looking forward to that day.
That's so fun. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Wow, what an incredible story. I came in knowing that this one was going to be inspiring, but I just adored this conversation. And this just brings me back to why I love doing this podcast. My whole goal was just to chat to moms about motherhood. And sometimes I feel like maybe I need to niche down a little bit because I've got like baby registry all the way to menopause. But oh my gosh, all of these conversations have been so eye-opening and just needed in this world. So if you are loving this podcast as much as I love bringing it out to you, then please leave me a comment, leave me a review, subscribe to my YouTube channel, all of those goodies, and come say hello to me on social media, because my goal with this podcast is to form a community of moms. And I think that's the first start is over on social media. But anyways, thank you for tuning in to another week, and I can't wait to bring you another one next Friday.